And we are going to be discussing today and sharing with you a brief presentation that we made. So this is a bioregional mapping with some community artwork that we've put together, and our the theme of this is swimming as a river, because we are focusing on what do we need to do in order to make our water swimmable? We're focusing on the Great Lakes, which has a lot of pollution, both plastic and toxin pollutions that make it just unswimmable. And like it's actually dangerous to touch some of the water in certain areas, which is ridiculous because we're so close to the largest freshwater source in the world. So that's kind of where we're coming from. And do you want to take over, Elliot? I need to figure out how to put this into slide mode.
Sure. It's barely a presentation. So if you just want to move the slides forward, like by clicking there, that's all good. This is our little agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about mapping art and our inspiration for this exercise. Get your art supplies ready if you don't already, because we're going to have a fun and silly exercise. Then there'll be an invitation to start creating your piece of art. Doesn't matter if you finish it or not, or just get started. We'll keep making art and talk a little bit about what Anna and I have drawn as we have been engaged in this process. And then to close out, we'll share what we've made and provide some closing thoughts. So you want to move it over to slide number 8 there. Maps, they tell a story about place, and in some cases, maybe they tell us how to get to where we want to go. So we basically just organized this meeting to get together and make some art. And it's a practice. We're just practicing how to host community art/mapping that inspires and connects people to their place. And part of our inspiration has come from a recommendation from Brandon, which is this Islands of the Salish Sea project that engaged over 10% of the population on 17 islands in the Salish Sea. And one of the outcomes, just one of the outcomes, was that they produced a whole bunch of community maps, such as this one for Texada Island that you can see on the screen. So if you can go to the next slide, Anna, we get to our quick, fun, and silly exercise. So I don't know how long you want to take for this. Let's say 60 to 120 seconds. I'm not going to count them exactly. Think of an animal, water, doesn't really matter, that means something to you, and draw, paint, outline / create it. And I think there's an animation on this one if you can go one step forward. Yes, 60 seconds. That's what we came up with. So go. I've got one in mind. I'm going to start. You have a timer going, Anna? Me neither. Well, we'll do a
I don't. I
countdown.
was too focused on trying to get my my thing colored. We'll do another 30 seconds.
Cool.
Ten more seconds. All right, and done.
Okay. I went very complicated. This is what I came up with here. Some little slugs and snails, and I'll tell a little bit about how they fit in to a story of my place. So yeah, I think we did this in the check-in rounds, but maybe here we can just do a quick round where everybody shares what they drew or how they feel. Okay, thanks, Brandon. And anybody want to share anything about that little exercise there?
I can go. I had a hard time imagining an animal, but you mentioned other parts of the watershed. And for me, the first thing that comes to mind is what's close to me and what we're gonna be talking about with the Niagara River. And it's this very lovely drawing of Niagara Falls. I did the Horseshoe Falls over here, and then this is the American Falls, if you can't tell. Um, it's one of the largest waterfalls in the world, not the largest, but definitely, I believe it has the most water running through it. It's a sacred site for the indigenous people who live here, the Haudenosaunee. And it is also ecologically important migratory bird area. There's a lot of birds that come through the Niagara Escarpment, which is just the ridge in between Lake Ontario and Lake Erie that creates the Niagara Falls. So. Would anyone else like to share their drawing?
Sure, I can, but maybe it would be good to take it off the screen share so that people know. Okay.
Yeah, hold on. Good idea.
Okay, this is gonna feed right into what I had to say. It's like just trying to remember what they look like. I was trying to do an orca and then I could not remember what their dorsal fins were like. So I know I don't have it, but I got the fins and it's just we're in the Salish Sea and the orcas are often going by where we live. So
You go.
I found that turtle that I was talking about crawled up on my desk. Hello.
oh, that's awesome, Chad.
Yes, very creative. RJ, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether this shows up or not. I did a beaver. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, okay. You can probably see it there. And his little hutch that he's building, although I think the entrance is probably below the water. But yeah, he's staying close to his new building project and working on a little tree or sapling on the side.
That was really good.
Oh, thanks.
Definitely looked like a beaver.
Or a reasonable facsimile, yeah.
Well, I did a frog, but I'd rather not show you the picture. That's terrible. But yes, we are creating a frog pond, we hope, on our property. And we're associated with someone at something called a frog house, who has a pond with bunches of frogs in it. So apparently not difficult to attract them.
Thanks, Jonathan. Benji and Brandon, did either of you want to show your pictures? It's fine if not.
They put in the chat that they're both observing, working on other things Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I started talking there, but I had myself muted. So might sound cliched, but I definitely feel inspired and connected by what all of you just shared. Yeah, I'm smiling for sure. So the next part of this little exercise that we envisioned is an invitation to start making art about water or an animal or a plant or a part of your neighborhood or any other type of characteristic or feature of your watershed. And while you start on that, we also invite you to listen to kind of why we're trying to make these community maps, why we chose the Niagara River specifically, and if that sounds good to everyone, I'll flip to the bigger drawing that I made and to kind of practice this process myself. So I drew the eastern box turtle, which is actually extirpated. It is locally extinct. It's not present within the Niagara River watershed anymore. And I didn't know this until about a year ago, when my friend, old-time farmer, she's also Mohawk Turtle Clan, started asking about where these turtles would be because they're used for women's ceremonial rattlers. And that's when I started researching it and found out that they were extirpated, and have continued to think about doing that baseline research of what type of habitat do they need, what do they eat, what are the threats that they are facing, uh, and then as I've continued to think about that, and then especially within this context of bioregionalism, I've been thinking about who are the people that I need to talk to further south in Pennsylvania and the Carolinas, where these turtles do still exist. And is there a way where we can create a pathway of suitable habitat that is complementary to, all of the human uses that we need, that instead of like, flying this turtle across the continent and starting a breeding program here, we could literally have this turtle walk back to this area. And it would walk. This turtle actually drowns if you put it in too deep water. It's pretty much as close to a tortoise as a turtle can get. So that's part of the reason why I drew this box head turtle, um, because I feel that it is the reason that we can't swim in these rivers. It has all of these, and the Great Lakes, it has all of these reasons like phosphorus overloading and whatever untreated sewage and things like that. But ultimately, it's I think this is how I feel, that it's about relationships that are not in order, and our own internal thoughts that maybe limit us or captive keep us captive in a certain space. So if we can start to make these relationships again and map out what the landscapes need to look like for us all to be healthy and to be able to swim in rivers again, uh, I think that's a very worthy pursuit. Um, I'm going to flip to the next slide, Anna.
Yeah. Yeah. So this picture, I actually am quite proud of this picture. This is the great blue heron. And so the story that I have to go along with this picture, it's related to why we're also creating maps around the Niagara River. Not only is it very important to both Elliot and my watersheds as part of the Great Lakes, but it's also the location of Buffalo Niagara Water Keepers, which is a restoration, largely volunteer-based educational group in the Buffalo Niagara region that focuses on restoring the Niagara River and the Buffalo River and the shorelines of northeastern Lake Erie. So they do not only a lot of restoration work with native plants, they also do a lot of educational outreach. So part of the reason why we're focusing on this area is because it's actually a group that will be able to use these maps. We had a meeting with people from Buffalo Niagara Waterkeepers, and we're hoping to use artwork from different communities around the Niagara River, similar to this, and putting it as a cover page for a number of other maps that we can put together that will tell the story of the Niagara River watershed, tell the story about the phosphorus overloading and what's called combined sewer overflows. So that's when the sewer system overflows due to heavy rains, which happens a lot along the Niagara River and creates a lot of pollution. And also just different projects that are related to what the Niagara River Greenway is doing and what the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeepers are doing. They're focusing on developing living shorelines rather than having concrete shorelines that's so common throughout so many of the Great Lakes and Rust Belt cities, where it's concrete right up until the water, and we get so much runoff from our cities going into our waterways. So I chose the Great Blue Heron because a couple weeks ago I was volunteering with them. They also do, which my favorite part is called Restore Corps, and it's actually volunteers get to go out and plant the native plant species and remove invasive plant species too. This time we were actually out in the wetlands in one of the tributaries in the Niagara River planting native aquatic plants. We all had, waders on. We were getting right down in the muck and the mud, and we saw a great blue heron fly overhead. And one of the people in my group was somebody who lived in that neighborhood right next to it was the Cayuga Creek. And she said she's lived there for 30 years and she's never seen a great blue heron until this summer, which is the summer that they started working on this restoration project. And how much things have changed. Not only is her neighborhood isn't experiencing the level of flooding, massive flooding that had just plagued these neighborhoods for so long. Not only are they not experiencing that anymore, but the amount of wildlife that had returned just within a few months of them starting to develop this project was really, really wonderful. And they're looking at other places along the Niagara River that they can purchase and start to restore as well. So really just a very impactful organization.
Adding in some leaf litter on my drawing here. Here, let me stop sharing that presentation. Yeah. And that little 60-second exercise, I drew the little slugs and snails. Oh, I don't know if I can get it in focus. Anyways, there's slugs and snails there. That's one of the things that the eastern boxhead turtle eat. They are opportunistic omnivores, but definitely prefer uh, a high amount of carnivory in their diets. Yeah, so our idea for this initial map is to display the watershed in the middle and create a a map that shows both sides of that arbitrary border between America and Canada. So something like that would be in the middle. And then what we're imagining is that there are drawings like this that become a banner around the map itself. And maybe even ones that are like that banner corresponds to actual locations within the watershed. So one of the last areas that this turtle was seen in Canada was right where Lake Erie meets the Niagara River as it starts to drain into Lake Ontario. Yeah. And then what we're hoping to inspire with this map is other people, community members, whether they're ordinary citizens, quote unquote, or professionals that work for some type of organization that's involved in this work, for them to start adding their work and to start collaborating with each other so that we can have a booklet or a series of maps or a series of art pieces that accomplishes or sorry, that tells all of these stories. I was just reading one of Brandon's messages in the chat at the same time here. Got distracted mid-sentence. Yeah. You want to share that map right now, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm downloading it and I can show it too.
Okay.
Would you like to say anything about this, Brandon?
Yeah, so this is a map that was created by, it's actually the Frisco Bay Mussel Group, which was kind of a group that started to come together around the stewardship of mussels. And at that point, it was an endangered species. And it was actually that group, this was started by Judy Goldhaft. And it was that group with Peter Berg that kind of later actually turned into Planet Drum. And so this was kind of their first bioregional mapping effort and the re-envisioning of the San Francisco Bay, or or that kind of Bay area, from the mountains and envisioning the whole watershed. And so it was done actually as a companion, very similar to everything that you're just talking about. This was a companion art piece that went to a book that they published called Living Here. And then this was folded up and put in there. So I just thought it was a really nice example of exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And this is beautiful.
I think I could show, I don't know if that'll show up very well. And it's really a rough sketch, but you saw the beaver there before at the bottom. This is kind of what we call the Appalachian Edge. And the Appalachians run along what is locally known as Blue Mountain, and more specifically the Kittatinny Ridge, which runs all the way through southeastern and northeastern Pennsylvania into New Jersey, New York, and so on. And I'm trying to show a little bit the Great Valley, which is the best farmland in the world. There's a tractor there. There's the Appalachian Trail that follows the Blue Mountain. There's what's known as the South Mountain, which is kind of the southern end of this. But the Delaware River and the Lehigh River are the two rivers. The Lehigh runs into the Delaware, and it's the border also of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. The beaver is a good representation because so many towns and areas in the Native American names are named after the beaver or the black bear. We still have a lot of black bear around, and we still have beavers, but not as many. And we have many, many other examples of wildlife. North of the Blue Mountain is the coal region, but it is a beautiful area and very, very rich with wildlife. And the waters of the Lehigh and the greater Delaware Basin are really what nourishes the whole area. Heavily forested north of the Blue Mountain. So, sorry, it's my rough sketch. There is a beautiful map that was done that I don't have access to right now, but it was done by Nurture Nature Center and friends, that has the type of representation that we're talking about here, that is both in a way a map in our Western sense, and also has the influence of the wildlife and the culture and the terrain, a little bit of everything on it. It's quite an amazing map, and we could do more. Thanks.
Thanks, RJ. That was a great map that you drew.
More turtles show up on your deck, Chad?
No, but I have another idea. Are we sharing things?
Whenever you're ready, you are more than welcome to share. So Kim, I know that you joined late. We are drawing. Okay, you got it. Good.
Okay, I gotta get my prompts. Somebody else can share.
Still working on mine.
Anna and Elliot, I'm just wondering when you would like me to jump into some of the stuff. I just am not quite sure where you wanted me to fit in.
Oh, yes. I think if you have any like recommendations too on how we can be sharing or anything like that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I had a little bit to say about that, but I just wasn't quite sure where I was slotting into this.
Yeah, I think we were more so just kind of going with the flow, but I think because this is like a learning experience that we're piloting this, and we would love to kind of see how it might work in other communities. If you have any recommendations to share, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I'll just jump in right now. I'd love others to share, but I sort of felt like there is something, yeah, I'd just love to start out by talking about, because one of the things is, I think when we're thinking about an animal that we're drawn to or that we're particularly noticing in a space, that first of all, that animal is, as you were talking about, is part of its environment. The niche construction that happens, like the shaping of the environment, is happening with that critter or that animal. And sometimes we bring a whole bunch of assumptions into our understanding of that animal in its environment. And so I find that anytime that I'm approaching any art, there's a way of looking that often, even like, we think we know something until we start to really observe it. And so there's this often going to drawing and not just going to a photograph of the animal or like actually just trying to remember pieces of what it was that you were. It's not just what it looks like and trying to represent it as it looks like, but there's all kinds of other stuff that gets revealed in the observation. And that's what I had a few exercises just to take you through, if that's what people would like to do, but just to kind of open up so that it's not just with your eyes what you're seeing, it's how you're experiencing it, because that all comes into how you then represent the image. And it kind of helps to break you free from the assumptions that you just bring in. And I would say that a photograph which is, you know, obviously an exact representation of what you're seeing, sometimes can miss things because, I mean, I used to find that if I was trying to do an exact replica of like a like a drawing that was really accurate, I often felt as if it was leaving stuff out that, in as an artist or as the artist, anyone doing the drawing, you're the creator, you actually get to put that in. And I think that it can convey a lot. So yeah, so now that I've said that, there's a few exercises that I would be really happy to take you through, just to kind of, they're very simple, but and that's the direction that I had been thinking when we were speaking. But I know that others have got things to share as well. So what do you think, Anna?
Yeah, well,
Alex?
I'm wondering if, because we have a lot of time left too. So I'm wondering, why don't we, if people are, I'm ready to share mine. If anybody is open to sharing theirs too now, and then we could go into those exercises. Would that sound good?
Sure.
All right. So mine is, it's a very rough sketch, but this is what's called a hellbender. They're the largest salamander in North America, and they're native to this area. And they actually, I know about them mainly because I'm a docent at the Buffalo Zoo, and they have hellbenders. They actually had a hellbender breeding program that they collaborated on with the Seneca Nation. To restore them to some of the waterways down here, and they're really interesting because they don't have lungs. They actually breathe through their skin, and they their lungs are used, they do have lungs, it's used for their buoyancy. They walk along the bottom of the river and they sway back and forth so that the folds of their skin help them breathe. They're also just really ugly if you see them in real life. They're called snot monsters. Like that's one of their nicknames. So that's one of the ones that I drew. Chad, are you ready to share?
Sure. I don't have any drawing materials, so I had to improvise. All right. So if you went about 300 yards that way, you'd see a pond. And that's the pond right here. So much of our area is relies on aquifer fed bodies of water for a drinking supply. But then over here, so those aquifers are underground. So we take that off, we can see the aquifer. And there's this dioxin plume that's slowly spreading through the aquifer. We don't know how long it's going to take before it reaches our freshwater drinking supplies. So that's just to illustrate some of the biggest freshwater problem ago. There's a Gelman plume. There's an industrial site just over the way there, and they dumped their waste and found its way underground, and includes highly toxic chemicals, the most important of which is dioxin. So some of that's almost reaching our water supplies. So I'm not really clear on how to engage the cleanup, but it gets a lot of the citizens' attention. And I've also noticed in the class that I teach that waste and pollution tends to get more attention than biodiversity or climate change in terms of the interest of the students, which I thought is quite interesting. So yeah. And then with this right here, I was thinking about how to illustrate process, and maps present structure, right? But a lot of what we need to also attend to is process and change. And like what sort of media can we use to illustrate that? How can maps be part of those media? And thinking also about how a map is also I liked how you were talking about stories and maps, Elliot, before thinking about this. And I'm going to think about it as a map is a set of potential stories that you can walk through in different ways, right? So it's a nonlinear presentation of potential that can be traversed in many linear routes, and each of those is a story. Yeah, so how do we make process like extractable or teachable through that? Yeah. And the story itself, I was thinking about how the mapping exercise is pretty cool because I was picturing something like a river that bioregionally connected on both sides is a river, but it sort of splits apart like a zipper as you go down it through our artificial boundaries and constructions. And the process of engaging communities and making the maps is re-stitching that together. So yeah, if I was to draw something, I'd draw something like that. Yeah. Anybody else?
I just wanted to mention, Chad, that you very clearly are a very passionate teacher. That whole thing just reminded me of like a very cool science class.
Thanks. I think we need more show and tell this semester.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of broke up a little bit, at least from where I was when you were talking, Chad. And when you poured the substance in, was that the toxin or was that a solvent? What was that?
That's supposed to be the toxin.
Okay.
I think it's MSG free. That's soy sauce.
Oh. Well, I didn't do a drawing, but in speaking of process, last time we were together, there was the person, I forget his name, who talked about the plastics in Lake Erie that I was not aware of, like the condition there. And he added he sent you a little article about that and was in it. Well, in that article, there was a link to the study that was done, the first one ever on the Great Lakes, by this professor in Erie, Pennsylvania. And there was a link to a great video. I mean, it did show like the problems the problems, but it was also like really well done, and there was some hope in there too. I looked further at something, just looking at the watersheds around Cleveland for a minute, and there's 12 square miles, very small, a brook. But because of some problems that Cleveland ignored the Clean Water Act for a while, which I didn't know about, there's a lot of funding there. Well, they had this professor come and give a talk that they've got online, and it really went into the deep the very deep problems with the plastic and the fracking and the different things going on in the Great Lakes region and the Ohio River region. And I thought of a map because what's happening down the whole Appalachian corridor with the Ohio River is that now petroleum companies have and all around our state parks in Ohio, and now that the legislature has opened them up for fracking, right around them, there's companies applying for permits to begin fracking all around the state parks. And I thought, oh, it'd be nice to have a map and show all these different things because it's a real threat. And also all the way down the Ohio River, all the way down, there's, according to this professor, there are plans to make it, to generate plastics facilities and have it be like Houston, where you look down and it's this complete metal and industry all the way down the river. And I think mapping would be, I'm usually for like the beautiful maps, but I think that would be an effective map, especially if Chad says this kind of thing is what attracts students.
Yeah, and I think just in general, those kinds of maps are very attention getting from what I've done in, like, the community outreach that I've been doing with the Buffalo Niagara Waterkeepers, is having those sites of different like algal blooms, or like high pHs, or just those are the things that tend to grab people's attention, because some of their first some of the most common questions I get is, where is it safe to go into the water? How do you know when it's safe? Because we have so many beach closures all throughout the summertime, that tends to be what is most engaging and what most important to people when they're looking at maps. But
Well, and these are like what will be poisoning the water. I mean, there's no other way to say that.
Mhm.
And I think we need someone from the, what is the bioregion of the Ohio River? What is that's part of the Appalachian, the Northern Appalachian, or do we have anyone engaged? No.
Not that I know of. But yeah, Claire, you want to take us away with some of your exercises?
Well, okay. Well, maybe just to go on with what everybody, I mean, I can do that. I just am not quite sure if, yeah, I'm happy to do that, but maybe I'll just share some examples just to kind of fill it on with what others are saying. Is I often think of, so I'm thinking about Indigenous art and story of place, and just how, so I brought in the orca, where, so West Coast, and just, I don't know if you can see, I don't know if you know Indigenous art, like the First Nations art on the West Coast, but it's the actual images that are used, it's not a great one of an orca, but they often will have stories of place actually embedded into the art, where the symbols and the stories, the actual images are stories that are being told, that and there's the relationship that is also coming through, like yeah, so I just wanted to bring that in. And then I was also going to bring in talking about story of place. This was a piece that I did that was around the salmon, talking about I'm probably going to need to stand a bit further back, but just was wanting to bring the salmon in, but just sort of feeling as if in the context in which we are in, there was just so much that felt like there's salmon farming, which is really that it introduces the sea lice and all kinds of viruses to the wild salmon. And it's just like the main driver of that is the economy. It's like if you can measure everything that is in economic terms. And so it was kind of like looking at the salmon and looking at all of so talking about story of place and sort of putting the salmon into that. So just wanted to bring that in, but there were feelings about, yeah. I suppose wanting to bring in more than just the habitat, there was also the feelings that were coming up, and the sense that, yeah. So anyway, maybe take me off the spotlight, or unless there are others that want to share, and then I can go into some of the exercise that I had planned. So I do that right now. Okay.
Yeah,
So-
Ellie, are you still working on yours? Because I see you busy with it.
Whatever's in your heart. I'm super inspired here, and I can share about that. Is this an hour-long meeting or an hour and a half?
It's an hour and a half.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I'm in a flow here with drawing, and happy to keep listening and occasionally look up. And
All right, sounds good.
It's listed as an hour meeting on Mighty Networks.
Oh, it is?
Oh, that's right, because it's our mapping call, which is an hour long, but I had made this one an hour and a half. If you guys need to jump off, I'm so sorry about that. That would be my fault because I made 2 overlapping meetings. But this was going to go on for 90 minutes if you're also able to stay on. Seeing some head nods. All right, great.
Yeah, okay. So what I was talking about with making assumptions, when you start to actually look at something, and so I'm just going to talk about something like not the animals. I just wanted to take you through thinking about when you're starting to draw something, you start to realize that those straight line or those edge lines that you're sometimes drawing, actually, when you start to observe it, you know, I should have actually had some examples here, but so say you're drawing a sphere. When you're trying to draw the line, it actually isn't a line. It's actually more like a gradation of shading that sort of goes. So there's things that we make assumptions about, and we kind of fill in those details. And the reason why that's important is because it's only when you're starting to kind of really observe that you see that the things you thought were there, like if you really look at what you're looking at. So I'm just going to show this chair here. You can't just draw a line there. It's actually just kind of the shadow is kind of going around the edge. The reason why that's important is just if you tried to draw an animal that looked like it just had straight lines around it, it kind of flattens it. It doesn't. So not that you're I'm trying to take you through an exercise to draw, to, you know, sort of for perfectly drawing something, but it's just a different way of looking. And so so there's also feelings, and there's how you are, what the texture might feel like, what the sounds might be like in an area. It's not just the visual. And how do you bring that in to what you're representing? Because the drawing is just a representation of, and you've got the freedom, you're the creator, to be able to bring those in. And you know, a beaver might be brown and you may be seeing that, but actually, as a creator, perhaps there's a whole lot of other stuff that's going on where if you can let go of your preconceptions of what it's supposed to be and sort of allow yourself to just open up to other things that might be able to bring in something that helps others to see it in a different way, it's a really useful thing to do. And so what I wanted to do was just, I think it was fantastic to do the 60-second drawing, just to represent what it is. And sometimes, you know, if you're drawing people, stick people or stick animals are just fine, just to kind of represent, or just something that gives the shape. And so I would love to do that in the spirit of 60 seconds as an exercise, to just kind of close your eyes and think about that animal that you chose. And if it's on the water, near the water, or in the water, or on top of the water, what would the water feel like if it was? So this is not trying to anthropomorphize the animal, but it's you in relationship to that animal. What are you experiencing? What are you feeling in terms of, and just close your eyes just to imagine for a bit with, there's maybe a breeze coming past. And so if you're in the water, you may not feel that. You might see the rippling on top of the water. But what would the shape that you're feeling feel like? Or the, so just, and it does not have to, forget about it having to bear any connection to reality. It's more just what would it feel like, and what would the flow or shape, and actually more like what would the flow, what if you had to draw some really quick lines on a piece of paper. And so I did draw some here, just to kind of give you an idea. And then I've got some others here. So these are just lines of a feeling that's expressed. It's got there's no reference right now to the animal, but what are the lines? So this was sort of a really explosive feeling. I drew some over here that some were just sort of gentle and flowing. Some were starting to kind of just have energy swirling about. And then, yes, I think and then I have some others here. There was a sort of real confusion. Yeah, just all of these different lines giving some sort of expression. Not that but just where the lines and the thickness of the lines, the way that they are. So these are just lines on paper. And yeah, if you spend just 60 seconds doing something that has a feeling that might be in that environment.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. So would you recommend doing another 60, you want to do another 60-second with imagining?
Just the kind of, yeah, the kind of lines that you might imagine. And I'm going to try and bring it all together in a minute. But just, if you just enter into just doing that exercise. So I'm trying. So just wondering if anyone would like to share what they may have come. So this is about the relationship of the niche where that animal is and what you're observing. And it's more just, it's the lines that would represent, yeah, just a.
I can go first. So thinking this is kind of what, all right. So I just kind of drew waves because I'm thinking of my hellbender, because it's necessary for it to live in moving water. That's how it breathes. It can't live in still water. And then I also kind of slowly started including like a meandering stream that's kind of pushing out towards the edge. And my black lines are kind of like the rocky bottoms that it kind of walks along or it hides underneath the rocks. So that was what I was thinking.
Great. Anyone else? Anyone confused by what was asked?
I can share. And I started it, so it's like 2 minutes, because I started when you first started talking about it, but so like from the bottom going up, that was like me, the energy going toward That's a little squirrel. It looks like a lot like a stingray, but it's a little squirrel. And just kind of surrounding that, I love the squirrels that are here in our little habitat. And then it's like, it kind of looks like a tree. So like maybe I'm a tree.
Yeah, that's great. Anyone else?
There we go. That was really cool. It was a lot more abstract, and then this smiling lion face came into it at the end. Yeah. The whiskers, I tried to draw them as roots at first. And yeah, that was neat.
Yeah, I ran out of paper, so this is just kind of a verbal representation. But all the water flows constantly, sparkles, ripples, rolls over, very slow, steady, never ceasing, always the same direction toward the sea, and into everything, because it is so slow and rippling. There's constant animal life at the water's edge and in the water. From small fry to actually bigger fish like trout and so on. But all that sparkling, rippling, flowing, tumbling, all those things are present. And also a certain degree of impeding. If you have the beaver, will slow the flow, which increases it in other places. So that's kind of a visual representation, I guess. Flat, steady, flowing, rippling, sparkling.
Great. Anyone else like share?
Yeah, I had to draw this one out, but yeah, going back to the turtle. So it was interesting because I was in the water just a few feet away from the turtle. So the feeling of being in the water and the sense of almost going over waterfall. So it was sort of beautiful, but I didn't want to get too close and fall over the edge because danger lurked within, and also wanted to respect the turtle space too. So this mixture of
feeling of
curious, like the magnetism that is fascinating, but a little dangerous if you go too far. So.
Yeah, that's great. You can really feel that movement in that drawing there. So I'll just say there's a couple of other exercises just to add to this, but it's kind of what they're meant to do is just to kind of shake you out of any preconceived ideas that you might have, that once you've got them drawn, it allows you to sort of think about how you might want to incorporate some of the lines that you include in your drawing, or some of the pieces that you put into your drawing. So I'm going to take you through just one or two more, or maybe just one more. Just it doesn't make sense on its own, but once you start to use them kind of as the source material for what you're going to do when you do your piece where you're using your crayons or whatever, this it then becomes like your reference material for what you're going to put into it, and it does help to break it up. So when you're maybe close your eyes for this one, is when you're thinking about your animal and you're imagining it in its habitat, and it is just really in its own way, it's at peace, and it's doing its thing. It's like essence thing in or around the water, whatever kind of creature it is. And as you're watching it, start to pay attention to your body, and there's something inside you that's connecting to that creature. It's the reason why you noticed it. And think about the color that is in your chest as you watch that animal, and appreciate it being what it is, and the imagine that the space that you're looking at as well is it's not in harm's way. It's able to be who it is and wants to be. And think about the color or colors that you're seeing, and which parts are, if you had to take that color and infuse the animal with what the color is that you're feeling inside you. Maybe just sit for 30 seconds and just let that color seep into what you're seeing. And just think about, would some of that color be on all of the animal, all of the creature? Or would it just be on part of the creature? Kind of like you touching that animal. And when you're ready, when you feel like you've got a clear enough picture in your mind, it's okay to put. So in the drawing that you have, if you have some of those colors, maybe put some of that onto the creature that you've drawn. So, some people are very stuck on representing something exactly as they see it in sort of scientifically, sort of more scientific drawing, botanical drawing or animal drawing is, and some people are really particular about that. But art, you can do what you want to, and you can bring those pieces. So just think about what you're comfortable with and whether you would want to put some of that color onto whatever part was touching you and then that animal. And just, it doesn't have to have any bearing on reality in terms of what you see with your eyes. But the reality can be with you're bringing something else. This is a different abstraction you're bringing to this. So, yeah, so without putting anybody on the spot, if anybody feels like sharing what they've got,
I'll go, Claire, since I ran out of drawing space.
Yeah.
But the beaver, it's just you don't see the whole animal. You just see this moving yellowish brown against the surface of the water, and every once in a while you see the tail as it partially emerges. It is such a water. It is such a water being with a wake behind it and a sprig of green and in its teeth. Just constant motion, and that's the color, the yellow, kind of yellow brown maybe in a little bit of shade with the sunlight, you know, off the portion that you can see. So yeah, very vivid, and I can't quite describe what a vivid experience it is because it's not fast motion. It's just constant, you know, constant business using teeth and tail.
Yeah, I love how you've got the sparks of light in there, which is the color as well. So yeah, anyone else? You're muted there, Kimberly.
Yeah, the squirrel already had pink in it. So I did find some brown and I added some brown to the squirrel, and then I put pink down where I am to connect to the squirrel.
That's great.
Oh, Elliot, you can go.
Okay. So when you started talking about that, Claire, I was up here drawing the stars as we see them in the day. And I'm using we liberally. Yeah, blended into that blue sky there and thinking about the ancestors. So then I drew this blue log with a sleeping, hibernating turtle underneath it. Some of those blue colors from the sky as well.
Thanks, Elliot. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah. Actually, I shaded in my drawing because there was such a contrast. So it's a bit literal because the head of the turtle was white, but that was also surprising. So it was the contrast between the unknown of the water with this, but I thought was might have been a skull at first. So it sort of popped out. So the literal color was not what I expected, which is interesting. And then also the white or clear as the clarity, because the entire scene was very clear, the water was clear, but the turtle in particular, I could just sense the clarity of being a turtle. He's doing his turtle thing and doing it very well. So that really struck out. That stood out.
That's great. Yeah. Anyone else feel like sharing?
Yeah, I'll share mine. So this is the Gila monster, and not the Gila monster, sorry, that's a different salamander, or lizard. This is the hellbender, and I made him like a kind of mix of green and brown because they're very slimy. They're very kind of gross looking. I just think that they're so interesting though. And then a really dark purple because they live in the dark and they, you know, they're very at the very bottom of the stream and they're underneath rocks. So if you were to come across it, it would probably be the kind of thing where it's in a really dark area and you wouldn't be expecting to see them there. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, I can share mine. I think I'm not sure why I was feeling like there was red in the orca, but there was red. Yeah, I felt like I wanted to bring that into the shape of the ocean that was and sometimes you don't always know why you're bringing those things in, and there might be things that you want to play with later on, but they're just source material, and sometimes just letting it sit for a little bit is it just makes it interesting. I don't think you always know, you don't always understand, and sometimes I think with art sometimes it comes through you and other people actually help you understand or make some connections, or they bring their own connections to what they're seeing. So I think it's kind of cool to listen as the observer, as the person with the relationship, because there is some relationship, and bringing that as authentically as you can into the drawing, but not allowing yourself to just be trapped inside, I guess, the original stick figure or image that you thought it was. Is once you've kind of got that representation down, I think it's a really good idea to just go and take a sketchbook and maybe from a film, like if you've taken some video, or just actually observing it, and just the shapes and what are the patterns that it makes when it moves, like just what does that look like, and can you just draw it as lines as the way they move, because there's things that I think are really good to try and yeah, if you're representing that, the more closely you've observed it, the more you're really bringing the essence of what it is that you're and why you want to. It's not just just a nice idea. It's like you're really, really looking. So yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to bring in. Was just using different modalities to try and see and bring that in. Chad.
Yeah, this is great. It makes me think of why some of the best anatomy books or field guides are illustrated rather than photographed, because they're showing you not just what to see, but how to see it. And like a skilled illustrator knows what details to look for that the other observers might just pass over in order to see the thing that you want to see. And then, so then a good guidebook, you can almost download that template. So then when you go out, then you know how to look and what to look for. So yeah, so what does that mean for mapping?
Very good point.
And I think it has I think there's something about our relationship with why we think they're those creatures. Like, why did we decide to illustrate that animal, that creature? Yeah, we're making choices. We didn't just represent everything. And then how are we representing it? Yeah.
Minutes each for us to check out here. Does that sound like a good plan? Oh, I'm all fired up about this. So I started talking about relationships, and that is beginning of AWE for a black ash basket and the seed, and how it's a regulator in wetland environments, and same as the wild rice plant there, and how I learned about that eastern boxhead turtle is through a relationship that I had with a seed keeper. She held 6 varieties of corn at one point that nobody else in the world had, that had been passed down through her family. And she's got this t-shirt that says corn builds villages or something like that. So it's something where maybe for me to help out this little turtle, maybe it involves growing corn, wild rice, working with black ash baskets, maybe eating some escargot myself. I've done that as well. And yeah, I've no idea that this is where it was going to go, and it's whatever that is, orders of magnitude better than I thought it was going to be. So thank you. And I'll pass it over to you, Anna.
Yeah, I think this was a very experimental. We kind of had a very, if you can tell, a very loose structure going into it, but I definitely really appreciated everything that Claire you brought and that Elliot brought, and everybody, Chad with his very creative artwork that he was doing. So I'm very excited to I would like to continue exploring community art and mapping. And I think that there is a process that Peter Berg created to help with kind of guiding community map making, like the actual maps, that I would really like to explore in combination with some of this artwork. So I just am getting a lot of ideas and looking forward to continuing to do this stuff, because this is all certainly new for me, but I think it's a really wonderful exploratory process. And actually I met somebody in Pro Social World who this was her life's work. She was an art teacher and a science teacher, and combining science and art and how you can draw different aspects of your environment, how that helps kids create such a unique bond with their environment, was really important to her. So I'm just getting a lot of creative ideas for moving forward. Claire, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, I've shown you my image. Yeah, no, it's really, I think the thing that I get the most out of is just seeing what everybody else is coming up with as well, and different responses, and yeah. How about you? How about you, Anna?
How about me? You mean like how people are responding? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, just your checkout.
Yeah. Well, I just did check out. I guess that was kind of my checkout, but yeah, I just have how everybody has been responding to it. I think they bring such different aspects of it. Like, yeah, RJ, your map was so detailed, and Kim, like your squirrel was so a lot of passion involved in drawing it. Very unique. So yeah, I agree. I love everybody how everybody was checking out. Was that you at the end of your checkout, Claire? I'll pass it to RJ.
Yeah, it's a kind of a mind shift, because I'm not seeing any humans in this, only the human structures that are used as homes and for all the natural world, you know, the animals, the insects, the birds, and I'm realizing that I'm actually surrounded by all this. There are many more things going on, including salamanders and fox and, you know, different insects, and you know, really, I have no worry. If I weren't here, there would be so much life around. So just that thought, it really brings that to the fore.
You like to pass it to Chad, Kim, or Brandon?
I'll go chat.
Yeah, I thought this was really fun and not at all what I was expecting. I'd like to see more practice sessions. Yeah. And yeah, enjoy seeing how others see and seeing what others creatively came up with. So it's pretty cool. I'll pass it on to Kim.
Thank you. Checking out with like relief from, you know, creating, being reminded of all of life, and preserving it and including it with all of the mapping, and of process, and how each place we go, we just keep learning together. So appreciate that. Thank you. And did everyone go then? Is Brandon here? Is Brandon's just monitoring? Oh, you might be here.
I can jump in. No, it's been very fun to listen to, and then I would just second. It's a really fun process, and the creation comes through the doing. And I think it's a really nice reminder that we're all experts of our own place. And then it's really fun to hear how every different person interprets kind of the same challenge differently and based on our own experiences, or, you know, different animals, different things like that. So I just wanted to second that. I think just lots more sessions doing things, and it's a really cool way to kind of almost develop a story of place in a very different way. So, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Well, until next time, I definitely want to host something like this again with whoever is interested. So we'll plan for another one. And otherwise, everybody have a, oh, Elliot.
If you're comfortable with it, maybe the Mighty Network site is the best place for it, but take a picture of what you drew and put it in the comments or something like that. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Mhm. Right. All right. Well, bye, everybody. Have a good Monday.
Bye all.